Long before Massey-Ferguson became a global icon, long before its red tractors appeared in wheat fields across 5 continents, the company began as something far smaller and far more fragile. A simple workshop in 19th century Canada, where a blacksmith named Daniel Massey was determined to build machines that would make farm life less brutal. Agriculture then was a world of backbreaking labor, and farms rose or fell on a family's ability to work from sunrise to exhaustion. Every new machine promised more than convenience. It promised survival. Massey saw that future coming long before most. What he built in that tiny workshop in Newcastle, Ontario, became the first link in a chain of innovation that would eventually feed hundreds of millions of people around the world. As the decades passed, the Massey Company grew far beyond small-town manufacturing. They embraced mechanization early, building threshers, reapers, and binders when many farmers were still using horses and scythes. Their machines spread westward into the Canadian prairies, where settlers needed equipment tough enough to break virgin soil and reliable enough to operate thousands of miles from any major factory. By the early 20th century, Massey's reputation for durability had turned the company into one of the continent's most trusted agricultural brands. But the moment that truly transformed everything came in 1953, when Massey-Harris merged with Ferguson of England. It was a merger that did more than combine 2 product lines. It reshaped the entire identity of modern agriculture. Harry Ferguson had already changed farming once with his revolutionary 3-point hitch system, a simple arrangement of arms and hydraulic lift that allowed implements to become one with the tractor. It was intuitive, safe, and astonishingly effective. Implements no longer bounced, snapped, or wandered. They followed the tractor like an extension of the driver's own hands. Every manufacturer would eventually copy it, but Ferguson's design was the original, and when Massey-Harris joined forces with him, they gained not just an invention, they gained a philosophy. The combined company, Massey-Ferguson, suddenly stood on equal footing with giants like International Harvester and the fast-rising John Deere. Their strategy was simple: build machines for every farm, in every climate, in every corner of the world. What followed was a period of explosive growth, unmatched by almost any agricultural company in history. Massey-Ferguson tractors began appearing in African villages, South American plantations, European wheat fields, Indian rice paddies, and North American farms from Alberta to Arkansas. They built factories on multiple continents and created distribution networks so vast that for a time, no manufacturer sold more tractors worldwide. The Ferguson TE20 and its successors became iconic in developing nations, where their simplicity and ruggedness made them perfect tools for farmers who needed machines that could survive heat, dust, poor fuel, and minimal maintenance. Massey-Ferguson did not just build tractors. They built opportunities. Entire regions modernized because those small grey and red machines could plow, harvest, and cultivate with an efficiency farmers had never known before. But while Massey-Ferguson thrived globally, a quieter and far more dangerous struggle was unfolding beneath the surface. The company had expanded rapidly, sometimes recklessly, purchasing factories, acquiring dealerships, and entering markets faster than their finances could stabilize. Their global reach gave the illusion of strength, but the foundation was beginning to crack. In North America, competition sharpened. John Deere was gaining dominance through consistent engineering and relentless refinement. International Harvester, still an agricultural titan, held on to its vast dealer network and brand loyalty. Even newcomers from Europe and Japan were beginning to nibble at market share with smaller, more efficient designs. Massey-Ferguson, meanwhile, tried to be everything to everyone. Their tractor lineup ballooned, their factories multiplied, their promises grew faster than their balance sheets. And behind every successful model was one that failed to meet expectations. The early 1960s brought engineering missteps in certain mid-range tractors that damaged dealer confidence. The late 1960s brought financial strain as global interest rates rose and agricultural economies became volatile. But the biggest trouble came in the 1970s, when Massey-Ferguson faced a perfect storm of economic and competitive pressure. Agricultural machinery buyers are among the most practical customers in the world. A tractor is not bought on emotion. It is bought on the cold calculation of durability, serviceability, and cost of ownership. Massey-Ferguson's global success had created a sprawling corporate structure that was expensive to maintain, and by trying to support dozens of factories and product lines, the company spread resources thin. Development slowed. Some models were rushed. Others cost more to produce than they ever returned in profit. The once lean machine that had modernized farming around the world became an organization struggling to keep up with its own size. The economic turmoil of the mid-1970s turned that struggle into a crisis. Inflation soared. Fuel prices spiked. Commodity prices became erratic. Interest rates rose so sharply that financing new equipment became nearly impossible for many farmers. Sales fell across the industry, but Massey-Ferguson, already stretched thin, took the hardest blow. Adding to the pressure, their North American tractor engines, sourced largely from Perkins and sometimes adapted across multiple product lines, began facing stiff competition from increasingly reliable power plants developed in-house by Deere and other rivals. Massey-Ferguson was no longer dictating the pace of innovation. They were reacting to it. By the late 1970s, the cracks became impossible to hide. Dealers reported declining customer confidence. Backlogs of unsold inventory accumulated. Cash flow tightened to the breaking point. And still, the company pushed to maintain its global footprint, believing that withdrawing from any market would signal weakness. The result was a corporation fighting wars on too many fronts at once, unable to retreat and unable to win. Yet even in the midst of these struggles, Massey-Ferguson remained deeply respected by farmers who had relied on their tractors for generations. The machines themselves, particularly the small and medium horsepower models exported worldwide, continued to prove their worth in the toughest conditions imaginable. In developing nations, they were transforming agriculture. In Europe, they held significant market share. In many parts of the world, Massey-Ferguson was not simply a brand. It was the face of agricultural progress. But none of that could balance the financial realities waiting at home. By 1978, Massey-Ferguson's financial reports were sounding alarms loud enough for the global business world to notice. Debt had grown enormous, cash reserves were depleted, and the conglomerate-style structure that once seemed so visionary had become a cost anchor, dragging the company into deeper water. What made the situation even more tragic was that Massey-Ferguson's mission had always been noble. They genuinely wanted to bring mechanized farming to the world, and in many ways, they succeeded. But the ambition that let them rise also set the stage for their fall. No company could sustain that level of global complexity without equal financial strength, and Massey-Ferguson simply did not have it. As the 1980s approached, the company that once fed the world now fought for its own survival. Their machines remained in fields everywhere, but their balance sheets told another story, one of a global giant collapsing under the weight of its own success. And the real unraveling had only just begun. The opening years of the 1980s hit the agricultural world with a force few companies could withstand. Commodity prices collapsed, interest rates soared to historic highs, and farmers, already burdened with debt from the boom years, suddenly found themselves unable to purchase new equipment. Sales across the entire machinery sector plummeted, but Massey-Ferguson, already on the edge, felt the impact like a hammer blow. The company had been running hard for too long, borrowing to maintain factories, inventory, and global operations while hoping the next season would be better. But when the crisis arrived, it did not bring a slowdown. It brought a freefall. Dealers watched tractors sit unsold for months, then years. implement lines stalled on factory floors, and suppliers waited longer and longer for payments. Massey-Ferguson had become a company caught between two realities: an extraordinary worldwide reputation and a financial structure that could no longer support it. The parent company in Canada scrambled to find solutions. They trimmed product lines, halted expansions, and closed facilities. But the global footprint that once defined their strength now consumed cash faster than the company could generate it. For a manufacturer built on the promise of helping farmers survive hard times, this was a bitter irony. Massey-Ferguson was now the one fighting for survival. Yet even as their finances spiraled, the company's engineering departments tried to steady the ship. New models, including improved mid-range tractors and updated versions of proven designs, reached the market. Some of these machines were genuinely competitive, but it was too late. Farmers were not buying on innovation alone. Reliability, resale value, and long-term company stability mattered more than ever, and Massey-Ferguson could no longer offer those assurances. Rival manufacturers, particularly John Deere, strengthened their position during this same turbulent period by controlling costs more effectively and maintaining steady dealer support. Massey's once mighty distribution network began to fracture under the pressure. Governments took notice. Massey-Ferguson was more than a corporation in many parts of the world. It was an agricultural backbone. In Europe, Africa, India, Australia, and South America, millions of acres were cultivated with Massey-Ferguson equipment. These were not regions where tractors were conveniences. These were regions where tractors were lifelines. If the company collapsed, global food production would feel the impact. Recognizing this, the Canadian government stepped in with emergency financing in 1980, hoping to stabilize the company long enough for a restructuring plan to take shape. It was a lifeline, but not a cure. One of the greatest internal challenges was the sheer complexity of the company's operations. Massey-Ferguson had built factories in too many countries, offering too many overlapping models under a management structure that could no longer coordinate or control them effectively. Every region had its own needs, and every engineering team had its own priorities. The result was duplication, inefficiency, and rising manufacturing costs. A more focused company might have adapted. Massey-Ferguson, spread thin across continents, could only react. By the mid-1980s, layoffs, plant closures, and asset sales became unavoidable. The company restructured its tractor and implement divisions, consolidated designs, and attempted to simplify operations. They leaned heavily on Perkins engines, which remained highly respected, and continued to produce models that performed well in key markets. But the brand that once ruled international agriculture had lost the financial strength it needed to compete with Deere, Fiat, Ford, and the rapidly advancing Japanese manufacturers. Massey-Ferguson was still loved, but love could not remove debt. In 1986, the situation reached a turning point when the company's farm equipment division was reorganized under a new holding structure. This restructuring created the modern Massey-Ferguson brand we know today, independent from many of the financial obligations that had dragged it down. The move allowed new investment, new leadership, and new strategies. Gradually, the pieces of the old empire were reorganized into something leaner and more sustainable. But this transformation came with a cost. Massey-Ferguson was no longer the global titan it had once been. It survived, but it no longer defined the agricultural landscape on its own terms. The final step in the company's rebirth came in the 1990s, when AGCO, a growing agricultural equipment conglomerate in the United States, acquired the Massey-Ferguson brand. A GCO brought financial discipline, centralized management, and a commitment to preserving the heritage of one of the world's most important tractor makers. Under AGCO, Massey-Ferguson regained stability, modernized its product lines, and re-established itself as a major global manufacturer. The red tractors never disappeared from the world's fields. they simply changed hands. The Massey-Ferguson story is not one of total collapse. It is a story of ambition, innovation, crisis, and reinvention. The rise was built on engineering brilliance and a deep understanding of what farmers needed. The fall came from expanding too far, too fast, without the financial structure necessary to support such a vast global presence. But the legacy, that immense, undeniable legacy, remains untouched. Massey-Ferguson tractors introduced millions of farmers to mechanization. They modernized developing nations. They raised yields, reduced labor, and fed communities that had struggled for generations. In many parts of the world, the very first tractor a farmer ever operated was a Massey-Ferguson. For them, that machine was not just equipment. It was a doorway into a better life, a tool that made the difference between dependence and self-sufficiency. Few companies in any industry can claim to have directly improved the lives of so many people across so many countries. Massey-Ferguson did. Even today, the old models endure. TE-20 tractors plow fields in remote villages. MF-165s haul trailers in mountain regions. MF-240s plant grain in drylands where newer machines struggle. They run because they were built simply, built intelligently, and built for farmers with limited resources. That durability, that fundamental practicality, is what made Massey-Ferguson beloved. And it is why their machines still work from sunrise to sunset, long after the company that built them learned its hardest lesson. Massey-Ferguson did not fall because its tractors failed. The machines were rarely the problem. What failed was the structure behind them, the finances, the scale, the decisions driven more by global ambition than sustainable growth. But the core idea, the mission to build reliable, accessible machinery for farmers everywhere, never died. It persists in the brand today. It persists in the millions of tractors still operating around the world. It persists in every field turned by a red machine. In the end, Massey-Ferguson's story proves something that applies far beyond agriculture. That feeding the world is not only a technological challenge, but a financial and organizational one as well. Innovation can lift a company to incredible heights, but without discipline, structure, and measured growth, even giants can stumble. Massey-Ferguson rose higher than nearly any agricultural manufacturer in history, and when it fell, the world felt the shock. But through reinvention, it survived, and its machines continued doing what they were always meant to do, helping farmers feed the world, one field at a time.